All right, you all, I'm going to show you how this needle or this updraft carburetor works on this particular engine right here. This thing right here is called an updraft because the air comes in from the bottom of your carburetor and goes out the top that way, okay? So the gas comes from your gas tank through this line, through the top of this carburetor, and this right here is your float. There's a little valve right there that it lifts up and down. We don't want to get that messed up. But anyway, it lifts this little valve up and down and stops the gas from flowing and overfilling your carburetor. If you have a hole in this, your carburetor will flood all the time, okay? And there is a seal underneath that little valve right there that you can take in and replace if you're having problems. You can also replace that as well. But that's the top of the carburetor, and that's basically all there really is to that right there. All right, you all, here's your choke on this thing. Now, how many of you has ever had a machine, a piece of equipment, a lawnmower, especially these snow blowers, that won't run except you got the choke about halfway closed? How many's ever had that problem? Well, on this particular carburetor right here, that means that it's starving for fuel. If you have to close the carburetor, that's going to give it more fuel. When you open it up to full air, then it's not going to use as much fuel. But if you have to leave it halfway closed for it to run, that means it's starving for fuel, and this needle valve right here is stopped up. See that little valve right there? Now it goes up in this hole right here, but you don't want to install it until after you put your carburetor back together. As a matter of fact, take this out before you try to take your carburetor apart, or you'll bend this thing right here, okay? But that is a needle valve. It's got a hole all the way through it, and it's got little holes in the side of it. It's got a little hole right there, and then down here in the center, it's got another little teeny tiny hole. If any of those holes get stopped up, this thing will not run right. But most of the time, this tube is stopped up, and that's the reason it's starving for fuel. Now this screw right here that goes in there behind that right there is your main gas fuel jet. You either make it lean or rich by turning this screw, making the RPMs go up and down, way up or way down, depending on how the machine's supposed to run. But that's what this screw right here does. That's the only thing it does. So if your machine is not running correctly, we'll start, and then you have to keep the choke open or closed about halfway. This jet is stopped up. So you take it out. Make sure you got a screwdriver that fits this real good, because you can tear this up really easy. Of course, put that back down in there, start screwing it in. It goes a long ways down in there too, you all. Make sure you don't get anything in it when you're putting it in there. I've had this one out a couple of times. I think somebody else had it out, and they sort of stripped the threads a little bit, but I think it's going to work okay. Like I say, this is the main fuel jet that where it gets introduced into the engine, okay? And just tighten that down until it stops turning, and then do not go any further than that. In other words, don't torque it. This is brass to aluminum. It's quite a ways down in there. Comes to a stop, that's all you do. Now you put your fuel lean rich screw back in there. Of course, there's a little gasket that goes on this, and I'm going to have to get another one for this one. It's not that good. But we tighten it back down. Now, here's where your throttle goes. This screw is your idle screw. This is your air mixture screw to get the air correct after it goes through your carburetor. That's basically all there is to it. But the main thing you want to remember is, in the wintertime, you want to run this thing completely empty of fuel. Don't let fuel just sit there in that bowl, okay? Run this thing completely dry till it stops and it gets all the fuel out of it, because the additives that's in fuel now just gums everything up, and literally gums it up. And I know you folks know that. Anyway, that's what it looks like. And once again, if your motor will not run, but with the choke about half closed, that's because your main fuel jet on whatever carburetor you're running is stopped up, and you have to unstop it. Okay, you all, that's the Updraft Carburetor for that 8 horsepower engine, and that's how it works. Once again, thanks for watching, and God bless you. Have yourself a great day, you all.